into matter. Hundreds of particles or fields are created. And these are not things that are coming from inside the proton. It is fields being made from kinetic energy. This collision process happens 40 million times every second inside 4 colliders, running most of the year, 24 hours a day. That's a vast amount of collisions produced. The data challenges of coping with this rate of collisions is extraordinary, they say. How did they find the Higgs boson? 2 protons collide, and if science is lucky, they will create a Higgs field. The physicists at CERN say that the Higgs field lives for a tiny fraction of a second, too short to be detected. The Higgs doesn't ever reach the detector. It's created, and it disintegrates instantly, they say. One way it decays is into 2 particles of light, 2 high-energy photons. So when the Higgs was discovered, 2 gamma rays flew out from the collision point that came from the Higgs decay, and this event happened in the atlas. The analyst looking for the Higgs goes through all these trillions and trillions of collisions and finds all the collisions where there were 2 high-energy photons produced because they might have come from a Higgs boson. And then they take the energy from those 2 photons, add them together, and work out what was the mass of the object which they came from that was created right at the center of the collision. They reconstruct what the Higgs decayed into from the bits that fly through their detector. Like blowing up a car and trying to work out what kind of a car it was from the bits of shrapnel that go flying past. They analyze all the pairs of photons, calculate the total energy, plot it on a graph on a vertical axis, and get the number of pairs of photons. On the horizontal axis, they get the total mass of the object they would have come from. Most times when they see 2 photons, they didn't come from the Higgs, they came from something else. There's many ways of making photons. If they bang protons together very hard, they get light. That's what happens. Most times it's just background noise, they say. They said the reason the Higgs find was important was a certain mass, which is 125 times more or less the mass of the proton. They saw a little excess because every time they make a Higgs, the Higgs is always the same. It always has the same mass. The photons from the Higgs will always add up to the same mass. They get a little excess at the particular value, so graphic bump, CERN called it, is the sign that this field is really there, and the field that really convinced everyone on July 4th, 2012, was that both experiments ATLAS and CMS both saw a bump in the same place. That was when everyone got excited at the Large Hadron Collider. The LHC ran for 2.5 years until the Higgs was found. Since then, there's been a string of bad news. Before the Higgs was found, certain results caused problems for some of the other theories they were looking for, particularly supersymmetry. CERN thought that when the LHC was first switched on, that there would be many supersymmetric particles. But what happened is there's not been a sign of these things at all. It's been 7 years since the Higgs was allegedly discovered, and not much has happened since. They claim to be studying the Higgs, and that they are trying to pin down the standard model Higgs boson that Peter Higgs said should be there. Or is it some other more exotic type of field? And for the extra dimensions and supersymmetry, so far they claim that there hasn't been any sign of them. I think science on the surface is just toying with us personally and hiding the power of our consciousness from us. It's a stall tactic, really. CERN is also running an experiment called the Large Hadron Collider Beauty Experiment. Beauty stands for a particular type of particle, the B quark, usually referred to as the bottom quark. What LHCb does is different. Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared, claims that energy and matter are essentially interchangeable, which they say they proved by smashing photons together and measured the mass versus the energy for an equivalent amount. I think energy becomes matter when consciousness observes it. So yes, in a way, energy and matter are the same thing, but if there's no consciousness observing the energy, then it remains kinetic energy and undisturbed energy. LHCb is different in that it does measurements which are indirect. They study ways that the B quark can decay. If it can decay into some other set of particles in the standard model, any decay process where one particle turns into a bunch of particles usually happens via the weak force that mediates these kinds of decay processes. Just like you could use the standard model to predict accurately the property of the electron, they also use it to work out how often a B quark can turn into these other particles. These scientists claim that if there exists some other force field, there's a fifth force. It could be supersymmetry. If that force exists, it can very subtly influence the way these particles decay. Science on the surface tells you they don't know what the other field is, but the powers that be do. And I will now explain to you what they know that they don't want you to know. The other fields they claim to be looking for are your consciousness and the ether. You are consciousness. You are a toroidal field of electron magnetic energy. Every field or particle is a toroidal field of energy. The Earth is a gigantic toroidal field of energy. The toroidal ring is how the electron is magnetic. It's a plasmoid ring, vortex ring, or a helicon ring. Instead of a single orbiting charge, the toroidal ring is a collection of infinitesimal charge elements, which orbit along a common continuous loop that can assume any shape, but tends toward a circular form due to internal repulsive electromagnetic forces. In this configuration, the charge elements circulate, but the ring as a whole doesn't radiate due to changes in magnetic fields since it remains stationary. The ring produces a magnetic field, or spin, due to the current of the moving charge elements. These elements circulate around the ring at the speed of light, but at frequency, which depends inversely on the radius. The ring's inertial energy increases when compressed, like a spring, and is inversely proportional to its radius, and therefore proportional to its frequency. The proportionality constant is Planck's constant, the conserved angular momentum of the ring. Electrons and up and down quarks can be viewed as bundles or fibers or plasmoids with total charge plus or minus E. That means it can take positive or negative. The electrostatic repulsion force between charge elements of the same sign is balanced by the magnetic attraction force between the parallel currents in the fibers of a bundle, per Ampere's law. These fibers twist around the torus of the ring as they progress around its radius, forming a slinky-like helix. Circuit completion demands that each helical plasmoid fiber twisted around the ring an integer number of times as it proceeds around the ring. This requirement accounts for quantum values of angular momentum and radiation. The number of fibers is 3, like a rope. The helicity of the twist distinguishes the electrons from the quarks. The toroidal or helicon doesn't need a constant radius or inertial energy for a particle. Its shape, size, and motion adjust according to the external electromagnetic fields from its environment. These adjustments, or reactions to external field changes, constitute the emission or absorption of radiation for the particle. This is how particles link together to form atoms. Your consciousness lives in 2 places. It lives on the other side of the unseen ether. The ether is the medium in which the consciousness operates, with the toroidal ring. So your consciousness looks into the ether, and based on observation, it turns toroidal fields into apparently physical objects. It creates your physical body and everything around you, and it sends out waves that return waves to you. You create your reality and you emit a signal that goes into the ether and returns to you the waves you emit. But it returns those waves in apparently physical form. So if you are emitting a wave that the Earth is a spinning globe, and that is how your mind has been programmed in this apparently physical reality, then a globe will come back to you. And that is what you will see and believe. If you emit a wave of belief that is flat or concave or hollow, then that is what you will have returned to you as a standing wave in space-time and apparent matter. But in reality, everything, from the smallest electron or quark to the so-called and alleged planet, are toroidal ring fields of energy. They have no mass until your observation gives them mass. They are toroidal fields until you observe them into your apparently physical reality. You are formless consciousness that creates the formed physical in which you live. And based on what you truly believe, you create that physical form. So, who is controlling your mind? What is controlling your mind? Your consciousness. Are you controlling it? Or is the corporation that is posing as a government controlling it? Is the mass media and the US of A Corporation's Department of Education controlling your mind? Can you cast aside all beliefs and start anew, knowing that you are the captain of your ship, that you control the electron magnetic toroidal rings? You are the Lord of the rings. On my next show, I'm going to give you the tools to start taking over your life and removing yourself from the slavery of those corporations that are posing as governments/control minds. They don't want us to harness our true creative power. That's why they are hypnotizing us with this flat versus globe debate, and with TV and movies and music and food and work and the monetary system and politics. It's all a shell game to hide our true creative power from us. You are literally creators in this apparently physical world. When you look at the back of the dollar bill and you see that eye on the top of the pyramid, what is that telling you? It is saying that your subconscious eye mixes with your physical eyes and builds the building blocks, the electrons and quarks of your reality. They have hidden the truth in plain sight. You create the very world that you see. If your subconscious believes the world is flat, then that is what it is. If your subconscious is programmed to believe the world is a spinning globe, then that is the world you will see. If science shows you a video of the Earth from alleged space, then I believe it will look like a massive toroidal field, just like every other field of energy in this electron magnetic matrix. You are the creators of your very existence. There's no real logical reason to continue this debate about the shape of the Earth. The real debate must shift to how do we eliminate the control mechanisms that have been put into place by the so-called powers that be. Okay, living souls, thank you for tuning in. I hope you've learned something and that you can see that there is a vast paranormal conspiracy by the mass media industry, programming you in ways that you cannot even imagine. If you're interested in reaching your fullest potential as a living soul, then please start implementing my solutions that I'm giving you here on the Ronald Russell Farnham Show. I have the solutions for all of the problems that we are facing inside this toroidal field. Thanks for tuning in to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network on www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. I'm your host, Ronald. Thanks to Gary Anderson and thanks to MoveNow.com. And thank you again so much for listening. Until my next show, where I provide you with a major tool for your freedom. Program yourself how you want the world to be. Program yourself how you want your world to be. Good night.